Think it is recording. Have you ever seen Ernest? Remember that movie?
There was a few of them. I think I saw one or two, maybe.
Yeah, there was a whole series. I think that guy actually died. But anyway,
Jim Varney?
Jim Varney, yeah.
Oh, how old was he?
I don't know. Wikipedia knows though. Yeah, Ernest P. Worrell, fictional character played by a guy named Jim Varney. Oh, well, he didn't die. Sorry for assuming that he did. He just became irrelevant, kind of like Pee Wee Herman. But Pee Wee Herman was actually...
Why isn't my volume going up?
All right, so let's get started. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the 14th Pocketnow Podcast. I will be your host, Brandon Miniman, Editor-in-Chief of Pocketnow. Also on the line is Evan Blass, Managing Editor of our fun site. Say hi, Evan.
Hey, guys. Hey, Brandon.
Yes, and we cover smartphones, as you know. But if you're listening to this podcast, you probably like smartphones too. And we're going to talk about smartphones for about 55 minutes, which should be pretty exciting if you care as much about these things as we do. So a lot to talk about. How do you want to start?
We could have a whole show just on the Galaxy S2, couldn't we?
We should have a whole show on the Galaxy S2. That's a great idea.
In fact, I could probably just skip out this week and let you talk about that, and that would work out just fine.
I don't think I could talk about the Galaxy S2 for 55 minutes, but we put our review up, and for, I think, the third time in our 11-year history, we've given a phone 5 out of 5 stars. The reason that we did that is because the Galaxy S2 is such a well-rounded device in terms of hardware and software and battery life and performance. It's pretty ridiculous how good of a package Samsung put forth here. And everyone that holds this phone in their hand says, wow, that phone is thin. Because it seems that the trend has sort of been going in the other direction. We've got the Thunderbolt and even the Inspire 4G, which seemed to be thin to me, is actually thick in comparison to the Galaxy S2.
Yeah, it's sort of interesting, and it made me wonder. Yesterday we learned that the variants that are coming to the U.S. are probably going to be nearly identical to the international version, at least in terms of their form factor.
Right.
And so it made me wonder: do we really need to review, the American versions, at least 3 and possibly 4, phones that are, just going to be the Galaxy S2 with, a little bit of software tweaks?
Well, I think what's going to happen is exactly what happened with the Galaxy S, which is you'll have the very, very similar devices, but the casing will be different, the weight will be different, thickness is different, the software is a little bit changed, but generally speaking, they're all going to be very similar. But that's
the whole thing that I think we learned yesterday, though. That if these form-fitting cases are made for 3 devices, there can be almost no difference in what the physical shape of the phone's like. Don't you think?
That would be almost unprecedented, right? To have a phone have the exact same form factor, to where even a case, which is very sensitive to even small variations in size. I just lost my sentence there.
No, I see what you're saying. Well, how about the Touch Pro 2? That was, it had that had different key layout on each of the carriers, as I recall. But in general, I think physically they were basically the same phone.
I think that they were very, very similar, but they were slightly off to where you couldn't use cases interchangeably between the Verizon Touch Pro 2, Sprint Touch Pro 2, AT&T Tilt 2, and the T-Mobile. What did they call it on T-Mobile?
I think it was just the Touch Pro 2. The only one where it wasn't was the Tilt 2.
Yeah. So, but these names that may or may not be the names for the Galaxy S2 in America, they're the names. They're kind of boring. Someone needs to get fired at the marketing department. So the AT&T Attain, the Verizon Function, and the Sprint Within.
Well, first of all, I don't think it's going to be like that. I think it's going to be the Sprint Galaxy S2 within. So the main part of the branding is going to be Galaxy S2, and the end is just sort of different to differentiate them. I could be wrong about that, but I feel like that's how they're going to do it. And I feel like Samsung had a lot more bargaining power here than the first time around when they were just trying to get the Galaxy S on all the carriers. So I think that the carriers probably could have said we want ours to have a flash, we want this one to have better build material, make it look a little bit different. But I think this time around, Samsung was really in the driver's seat because this is a hot device that people want, and so like an iPhone, this is something that the carriers are going to want to carry and probably are going to make concessions to Samsung in order to be able to carry it.
Yeah, I mean the Galaxy branding was secondary to the first wave of devices, and now it's Samsung has more bargaining power, as you say. So, yeah, and the listing for this accessory says Galaxy S2 Attain. So if we're taking that literally to mean that the Galaxy S branding will be will preface every name that will be assigned to the carriers. What do you think is going to happen for T-Mobile since that's missing from the list?
I read somewhere that, well, who knows? I forget where I read it, if it was just a comment or if it was an article, but someone said that that T-Mobile would be getting a version that was significantly different hardware-wise, so that enough so that like the Epic 4G, it was sort of an outlier. But who knows if that's true? I suspect that T-Mobile is just not going to get one, especially because Samsung sees their subscribers bleeding now that everyone knows they're going to be consumed by AT&T, and they don't want a phone that's going to be obsolete, even though it's not really going to be obsolete. So
right.
I suspect that Samsung didn't want to put its resources into T-Mobile right now, and I think we'll probably going to start seeing that more and more. Don't quote me on this. Well, maybe if it happens, you can quote me. But I think maybe the double shot might be the last high-end phone we'll see from HTC on T-Mobile.
Well, here's what I think. I think the merger of these two companies is a little bit too far off to speculate that already OEMs are making decisions. But how about this? Have you ever seen a slide-out keyboard device that had a 4.3-inch screen?
No, they haven't made one yet.
Haven't made one yet. If they took a Galaxy S2, which is remarkably ridiculously thin, kept the 4.3-inch screen like they did with the Epic and the Galaxy S line of devices, you can see where I'm going with this. They could make the most ridiculous slide-out keyboard device if they could keep the device thin, keep the 4.3-inch display, and have an awesome keyboard. That would be a creamy device for T-Mobile.
Yeah. I think it'd be even better if they could make the keyboard detachable. So you could have a slate when you want it, and you could have the Pro style when you want it. Both, the best of both worlds.
That would be awesome. I think that that would be a lot of moving parts. That would be probably the ultimate, right? To be able to have the extremely thin form factor of just the Galaxy S, and if you're going on a business trip or whatever, you bring along the keyboard for really fast emailing. That would be probably one of the coolest devices of all time.
I mean, didn't they try to do that with the was it the Advantage, which was sort of like
yeah,
an intermediate sized device. That was actually one of the first attempts at a little tablet. How big was that? 5 inches, maybe a little bit more.
Yeah, also known as the Athena, so HTC Advantage. That had a very big screen. I don't think many people bought it, but it was definitely a really powerful device. It had like 16 gigabytes of memory, and this was just a 5-inch screen, VGA resolution, so the pixel density wasn't great, but
it was like the streak of its day, though, kind of.
It was the streak of its day. That's a funny name, Streak. Very good. Very good. Let's move on. Well, another piece of Galaxy S2 news is custom ROMs have begun, which is very important for this device because it's so ridiculously powerful, and it's got a lot of software on it that most power users aren't going to like that much. It's got a heavy email app that doesn't allow you to multi-select easily. The browser has customizations. It's got TouchWiz, and naturally you can uninstall, or I should say put a third-party launcher on top of that, but you still, at the end of the day, have to deal with a lot of the built-in stuff that weighs it down a little bit. So very big news for the Galaxy S2.
That is big news. I mean, it's always good news when you can fully take advantage of the hardware capabilities. And like you said, whenever you have Sense or TouchWiz on there or Blur, it's always going to be at the expense of some performance.
Absolutely. Another big surprise with the Galaxy S2 is that it supports not only AT&T 3G, but AT&T HSPA Plus up to, I believe it's 21 megabits per second. And I actually have some good news to report, because if you listen to the podcast, almost every week I bitch and complain about the lack of HSPA Plus for AT&T. I was in Washington, D.C., not last weekend, but the weekend before. I ran a speed test while over HSPA according to the settings, and I got like 6 down. And I ran it again, and I got like 5 down. So Washington, D.C. has AT&T HSPA Plus.
So you're saying that's a place where our really hardcore readers should move if they want the most bang for their buck?
Yeah, they should. Although, 6 megabits per second, I shouldn't be complaining. That's sort of on the bottom end of...
Yeah, what were you getting with the Thunderbolt?
The Thunderbolt will clock in at around 10, between 8 and 12, I should say. And I'm sure it's only a matter of time before that goes to 15 or so. It's funny, though, if you benchmark the Thunderbolt over LTE, you'll get between 8 and 12. But then if you use the hotspot feature and benchmark on a laptop, you'll get like 15, 20 plus.
Huh. Well, I guess, you're at that point you have a faster processor in your laptop, so maybe you can move bits quicker that way. I don't know. What do you think it is? Yeah,
that's probably exactly it. It's almost a little surprising that the first 4G LTE devices are single core, but we should see some pretty interesting performance upticks once we get to dual core LTE devices.
Yeah.
There is a truck outside my window, and so hopefully you don't hear that sound.
I can't hear it.
Good. Moving on. So, the next version of Android will be called Ice Cream Sandwich. So that's 3 words. And it will officially, by the way, Google I.O. happened. That's why we're talking about Ice Cream Sandwich, where they talked about that. They also talked about Honeycomb 3.1. So Ice Cream Sandwich, the headline here is that it will be a singular version of Android as to try to reduce this issue of fragmentation in Android. So the same version of Android will run on phones and tablets and TVs and refrigerators or whatever.
Now, do we know what number it's going to be yet? In terms of, what do we think it's, 2.5, 3.11, what?
They didn't talk about that, but what do you think? Maybe 4?
Yeah, I'm thinking the whispers I've heard would be that it would be 4, and it would make sense, to have such a big upgrade that's combining these 2 different what do you want to call them? These 2 different build families, I guess. To one, it would seem appropriate to have a completely new number, as opposed to putting in the 2 family would be weird, because then you're lower than Honeycomb, and putting it in the 3 family would also be a little weird, because then it sort of just makes it like a Honeycomb offshoot.
Yeah.
So I feel like what makes the most sense is 4.x, probably 4.0.
Definitely, and don't forget, version numbers are also a marketing component. So they want to show that they are jumping ahead of what Honeycomb was. They're jumping way ahead of what Gingerbread, Froyo, Eclair were, and going straight into the future. They're saying that it will bring a state of the art UI, but at Google I/O they really didn't talk much specifically about the UI, except that developers can build basically an application that is sort of hybrid. So if it senses the higher resolution screen for the tablet, it will display like a new panel of information. If it detects a phone, it'll keep it in a singular column. There will be more stuff with the action bar, so less. I mean, they've been talking about this for a while. Less commands buried beneath menu systems that make it difficult to find. I think this is their opportunity to really do some amazing things with very robust multi-core support, higher resolution displays, really take Android into 2012 and beyond. Any thoughts on what will be the defining characteristic of the UI for Ice Cream Sandwich?
I have no idea. I'm so bad when it comes to UIs and being forward thinking. I'm always amazed by what these companies are doing, and it always surprises me. So I have no idea what to expect. How do you like that for an answer?
No, I mean it makes sense. It's hard to, unless you sit around thinking about this stuff all day, thinking about, okay, what would a user want to experience? What color taskbar would make the UI feel light and fast?
Yeah, I mean, so many of the changes are it's something that you wouldn't even think about. It seems like it's so minor, but these people, the people who are designing it, they just that's their whole day, that's their whole job, and so obviously they're going to come up with and they should be coming up with things that are just more amazing than we can even conjure up ourselves.
Exactly, and an interesting hint from Andy Rubin. He announced that there will, or most likely will be, a new Nexus phone to run Ice Cream Sandwich, just as there was for Froyo with the Nexus 1 and the Nexus S for Gingerbread. And what he said was this: Google is definitely looking at introducing another phone that should blow the socks off of everyone and that should be able to handle Ice Cream Sandwich with ease. You notice anything interesting about what he said?
Should be able to blow the socks off everyone. Well, it sounds like a challenge.
yeah, that too. But also that he says that it should be able to handle Ice Cream Sandwich with ease, making it sound like Ice Cream Sandwich will require some significant hardware.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
Which would be a little bit. I mean, if it's that big of a jump, it'll be a little depressing if we can't upgrade our current phones to Ice Cream Sandwich. Maybe that's a hint that...
Well, I think one of the main holdups on the current generation of phones might be the graphics hardware. I'm not sure if the GPUs are going to be enough. Some of the stuff that we've seen Android doing where it's sort of... Where they use the camera and then the perspective of what you're seeing is shifted based on how the device moves.
Augmented
and tracking. I'm not sure that current gen devices. I mean, I know that a lot of them couldn't do it. Especially your mid-range devices and your entry-level devices.
Yeah. I think you're describing augmented reality a little bit.
Sure.
Speaking of updates. This is very interesting, but it seems like a last-minute thing. Google announces timely commitments to Android updates, and they've got basically every company that matters. I don't see one that doesn't on board with this. Verizon, Sony Ericsson, all the carriers in the U.S., plus Vodafone in overseas. Then we've got HTC, Sony Ericsson, LG, AT&T. Oh, that's a carrier. Exclude that. Motorola and Samsung. Not really sure about exactly the details of this. The idea here is to give people a better understanding of whether their device will see an Android upgrade.
Yeah, I think what they're doing is they're committing to a pretty tight schedule for 18 months out from any given device release. So they're saying, for 18 months, here's almost exactly what you can expect in terms of upgrades.
18 months. So that almost seems too long. I mean, the average person has a phone for 2 years. And after year one, I mean, I think 12 months would be awesome, but obviously there's a lot of work that goes into these updates, and they can't just, you know.
Yeah, I think one of the problems we've seen is they know that they can't push the updates out fast enough. I mean, if you look at what went on with the Galaxy S, I don't think they weren't holding it back just to be jerks. They were having really real world problems with pushing them out. So yeah, like you said, they know that there's going to be problems, and they're giving themselves an 18-month window because it was only 12 months. I think there's some devices they probably couldn't get even one upgrade out for, let alone two.
Yeah. So hopefully we get more precise information about that. Maybe when you go to a Verizon store, you'll see next to the little placard, there will be like a star that says this device is eligible for the ice cream update, and it will happen in 18 months or something like that. I don't know.
What a weird name, by the way. Do you think it shows a little bit of arrogance on Google's part to name something like that? Because they know that word is going to be used endlessly. I mean, how many times do we have to write honeycomb or gingerbread or read about it? And now, you're going to have to write ice cream sandwich powered.
That's a very good point. I was thinking that too. It is a little bit arrogant. They could call it whatever they want, and it's going to be huge, and so they're forcing people to. We're going to have to put it on like quick copy paste. Maybe there's a browser extension, so we don't have to type it so many times.
Yeah, or we could just start calling it ice cream.
It's not as delicious though, because ice cream sandwiches are very good, but ice cream alone isn't as interesting.
How about ice cream sundae?
Ooh, I wish they would have went with that.
I mean, that was the tease, wasn't it? When they celebrated like the 119th anniversary of the founding of the sundae.
So obviously that wasn't a hint, which we were talking about several podcasts ago.
Well, I mean, in general, that it could have been portending the arrival of ice cream something.
Perhaps.
I mean, I doubt that they could have found an ice cream sandwich event that was worthy enough of doing what do they call them, Google Doodles?
Yeah. I don't want to sound gross, but when I was a kid, I would eat ice cream sandwiches in a very particular way. I would let it melt a little bit, and then I would lick the sides, and then I would let it melt some more.
That's not gross.
Is that how you eat an ice cream sandwich?
No, I just eat it, but I don't think there's anything wrong. To each his own.
So you just bite it like it's a sandwich.
Yeah. I mean, I might give it a lick here or there, but in general, I go sandwich style.
That's what you said. Sorry, gotta do it. All right, let's
Oh my
move on.
God, you're gonna have to edit that out of the podcast. There's kids that listen to this.
Actually, there's a clause where everyone listening has to be 18 or older.
Yeah, I didn't see that anywhere.
Anyway, moving on, Google also announced Google Music and Google Movies. And these are cloud-based services. The Movies is very self-explanatory. They've hooked up with some studios. The selection's not that great. Right now, it's only for tablet and for computer. But they are rolling it out to phones very, very soon so that, you can go on market.android.com, rent a movie for $2 to $4, start watching it on your computer, watch it on your laptop, your laptop, watch it on your tablet, watch it on your phone, sort of like the iTunes model a little bit.
All right, so there is a degree of you can move it between devices. In other words, like the old model was you buy something on your phone and then it stays on your phone and you have to watch it on your phone. So, and who wants to watch a movie on their phone?
Yeah, I mean, it basically, since it's all streamed, you go on your phone, it knows that you purchased this and you have it available for 24 hours, just picks up where it left off.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense. I mean, I've rented movies on the computer where you have to download the whole movie, just to watch it once. And it just seems, it's a big hassle, and you can't move it from device to device. I think that's why that model hasn't taken off yet.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's pretty amazing that we've come to this point where you can watch content on multiple devices and pay for it one time and not have to worry about transferring things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also, interestingly, they've launched Google Music, which is very similar to the Amazon Music Cloud offering. Quite simply, you upload all your music, then you access the music and stream it through a browser, through your tablet, or through the smartphone app. Right now, you have to sign up for the beta. They're not giving access to everyone. It's free for now, 20 gigabytes, which is crazy to think about. You get free 20 gigabytes. It's very possible that they'll charge for this, probably like $20 a year. But this brings up a very interesting question about how we listen to music and how we consume music. Because for some people, this doesn't matter that much. For example, I use Zune. I love using Zune. It's $15 a month for unlimited music streaming. And unlimited music downloading. You don't
How much are they paying you to say that, Brandon?
A lot. You don't get to own the music except that you get 10 free downloads per month. But I don't care about that. I wouldn't mind paying $15 every month for the rest of my life if it means that I got quality or access to high quality, endless supply of music, which is what Zune affords. But with this music service from Google and from Amazon, this doesn't matter because there's no app for iOS or for Android for Zune. Or there's no way to even use this on a Windows Phone 7 device. Zune Music has to be synced manually, and it's a crappy model, and it kind of bothers me, but I can't get out of the ecosystem because it's so appealing.
Well, yeah, and you have all your playlists made now. You know, if you moved over to another ecosystem, even one that gave you, you know, all you can eat monthly, you know, you still have to build everything up again.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, even if iTunes came out with a subscription service, which would be great, I've got 5,000 tracks already downloaded from Zune that I don't want to have to recreate. What do you do for music, Evan?
I mostly listen to Groove Shark, but and then I have some songs here or there, but I'm starting to get old, Brandon. I mean, I just don't discover. Is that what the kids call it? Music discovery. I don't pick up as much new music as I used to. I listen to a lot of the same stuff that I was listening to 5-10 years ago, along with stuff that I'll pick up. I'll listen to Sirius sometimes or Pandora or whatever, but it's mainly just the same 180 or so songs.
Well, Groove Shark probably isn't the best tool for music discovery, but iTunes and Zune, they let you see the new releases every day. They let you get music recommendations. They do like a smart mix where they put similar artists together. But yeah, so you use Groove Shark. I know a few people that use that. So then there's an Android app for Groove Shark where you can stream. You're basically streaming full songs, right? From Groove
Right,
Shark.
but then you have to pay. That's the Groove Shark models. If you want to get any of these. Mobile clients, you have to pay a monthly subscription.
I see. And how is the quality on Groove Shark?
I think it's great. I mean, certainly, but I think 128 kilobit MP3s are great. So
that's so funny that we've been sort of programmed to like 128 kilobit music. I remember back in the days of Napster. I always tried to download 320 kilobit music. Kilobit per second is, I guess, the term. And then, of course, out there they have FLAC, lossless audio, and then they've got the audio files that listen to vinyl and say, CDs suck, digital is 10 times worse than CDs, and all of you are crazy. But iTunes and Zune and all these guys are streaming us 128K, sometimes a little bit higher, most of the time lower. And we don't really fuss about it.
Yeah. I mean, I think people are starting to become more cognizant of that, though, and advertising now is these companies are marketing a little bit more about that there was a big deal when iTunes went to a non-DRM model, or where you could pay a little bit more for the non-DRM song, and it would also be a higher bit rate. So. I think that I don't think that there's many places that are doing less than 128 at this point, unless it's free music from somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, you get some Shoutcast streaming radio. It can be like 90 something kilobits. But what's frustrating is that unless consumers are rioting about the lower quality is cheaper for these music purveyors because it's less bandwidth to stream. So they're very happy to keep it at 128K.
I remember listening to the Shoutcast on a Trio, back in like 2003 or something.
Wow. How was that?
Oh, it was like so low quality, and you could only listen out of the little speaker because if you didn't have the proper headphone adapter. But it was great listening to music from a phone. Oh man, at the time it blew my mind. I would just put it there on my desk, even though I had better speakers, and I could be listening to music through that. I would listen through the phone just because I could.
Yeah, fun stuff. Fun stuff. Let's bounce on to the next story, which is Droid X squared. I hope I said that right. Full specs have been revealed. Also, a release date is out there.
May 26th, I believe, is the date, right?
May 26th is the date. It's interesting because when we first started talking about the Droid X squared, we saw this device that looked identical to the Droid X, and the rumor was that it was going to be very much the same, except for like one or two things, which I think were the screen was going to be QHD, and what was the other?
The processor. It's a dual core processor now.
Yeah. Well, I think originally we thought.
Oh, originally, and this is not to knock on Engadget because at the time they had good information, but they published something where the Droid X2 was only going to be it wasn't even going to be an upgrade. It was all they were going to do was swap out the 16 gig micro SD card for a 2 gig, and it turns out that was just another SKU for Costco, I believe, instead of obviously the Droid X squared that we're going to come to know and love over the next year.
So, as it turns out, it's not going to be just that. It's going to have a Tegra 2 processor, gigahertz at each core, QHD display, 512 megabytes of RAM, 8 gigabytes of ROM. What is clear here, and we were going to sort of ask why, Verizon's keeping the same design, except on the back it says Droid X squared, and it's very clear because obviously this is a very winning design that a lot of people like, and this device obviously has a lot of momentum right now, and they want to extend the momentum of this device as their big screened phone for as long as possible.
Well, if you're asking why they didn't change the design, I sort of think there's two reasons. One of them is more practical in that they can keep the costs down because they have the machinery to fabricate these all set up. And also, obviously accessories are going to work with these, so case manufacturers don't have to retool their machinery either. But I think the other reason is, if they made this too different and too much like a 2011 device, it might eat into sales of the Droid Bionic.
That's true.
They're very similar devices except for the LTE on the Bionic, which has obviously been delayed. But I think that's that style is sort of is what we're going to see devices looking like from Motorola in the next year. And if they change the body style of the X to the X squared too much, then they would have had very similar devices both on Verizon.
Do you also think that maybe because of the Droid Bionic was delayed, this was a way to sort of bridge the gap?
Possibly. I mean, I think that they have these in production for quite a while before we even hear about them. Or, for instance, there was a Droid X squared being imagined during CES when the Droid Bionic was being introduced.
Right.
I suspect.
Yeah.
So I'm just not sure. The Bionic, gets introduced earlier and is going to come out later.
Well, another thing that happened relating to the Droid line is that it's not a big deal, but it's kind of entertaining. Motorola Verizon has updated the droiddoes.com website. Check it out if you've got a few minutes of boredom. It's kind of interesting.
I did check it out.
Did you like it?
Yeah, I do. Well, I do like it for sure.
It's funny because they've got this robotic voice explaining all the high-tech features of all the droids. Then you click down the Droid Pro, and I'm thinking, like, how is this robotic voice going to make the Droid Pro sound awesome? And then it was like, this phone has a massive 3.1-inch display with 300 HVGA resolution, and I'm
Right.
face palm.
I actually muted it, so I didn't even know that there was robotic voices.
Yeah, you gotta check it out. It's pretty funny.
I didn't like the last Droid does. I thought it was very confusing about how you got from how to navigate around the site, because there was all these lines, and then the lines would break out into more lines, and it didn't make any sense to me. So this one,
a little bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very good. Let us move on. Talking about the HTC Holiday, a device that
It's gonna be a hot phone.
might be pretty darn hot. So we've got some specs on it now that comes from 911 Sniper, coupled with a picture that we acquired. Kind of helps to put the story together a little bit. So 4.5-inch display. Looks like the Infuse 4G isn't going to be the only one in town to have the larger display. A 1.2 gigahertz dual-core Qualcomm Snapdragon, basically the same chip that's coming in the Sensation and the Evo 3D. A gig of RAM, dual 8-megapixel cameras. So do you think that this is going to have a 3D display, since it can take 3D pictures and such?
Wait, where did we hear that it could take 3D pictures?
Oh, I am misreading the post. So there's a 8-megapixel camera on the back and a 1.3 megapixel camera on the front. I thought that to mean there were two 8-megapixel cameras.
Yeah, as far as I know, there are no phones yet that have dual 8 megapixels. The ones that are doing 3D are all dual 5 megapixels.
5 megapixels,
right?
yeah. Yeah, so those things, plus it'll have a QHD display. Basically, what the Holiday is going to be is AT&T's version of the Sensation 4G, but with a bigger screen. Is that?
Yeah, exactly. That's how I would classify it from the specs, at least so far.
Yeah, that is going to be an amazing phone. I hope the battery life isn't horrible. Wow.
I mean, it looks like sort of a big device all around. So maybe they were able to stuff a 1700 milliamp battery in there or whatever.
Maybe. Do you think it'll ship with ice cream sandwich?
No, but I do think that I think because of the front-facing camera, I suspect that it's going to be an LTE device.
You think it's going to be an AT&T LTE device, really?
Yeah.
Do you think it could be the first AT&T LTE device?
I suspect. Well, I need to talk to Gabe about this and see what he thinks. But yeah, this is inside scoop here, folks. So hopefully the podcast doesn't get published before we can put out a post on this. But I think this might be one of the LTE devices that they're going to launch with. In fact, I'd bet money on it.
Oh yeah? How much?
I don't know. What do you got? What do you got in your wallet? I'm just kidding.
Let's see. Okay, if you win, let's see. If you win, I have to get you one of these phones. How about that? That's a good one.
It feels like it's going to be a very notable device. Yeah. And I saw someone in our comments put out some supposed specs from the ROM that say it has LTE, but until I see it for myself or someone I know and trust shows me, I'm not willing to say for sure yet, but I'm sort of confident on it. So that's why I said I'd be willing to put down some money.
Fair enough. I'll write that on the wall then. So that's very interesting. So let's move on beyond the Holiday, which should launch near the holiday appropriately. So the HTC Sensation 4G on T-Mobile is almost here, actually, according to a leaked launch date from T-Mo News. June 8th is the magic day. We also saw it at Target for $199, which is kind of cool because right now the the highest cost smartphone out there that I can think of is the Droid Charge at $300. And the fact that the super high-end T-Mobile HTC Sensation 4G is going to be $100 cheaper is a really good sign.
Yeah, and it'll be a 4G phone, just like the Droid Charge. So, what are you paying for? What's that extra $100 getting you?
Totally. And, it's going to be thinner than the Droid Charge. It's going to have a higher res screen. It's going to have dual. I mean, in almost every way except for the LTE modem, it's superior.
And it doesn't have the boot up eye, the red eye.
Oh no. Oh well. I'm sure with some hackery you could have a red eye. Very good. Let's move on. So we are going to New York. We meaning me and Adam, or Adam and I.
And Steven, right? He's going to be there.
I don't know if Steven's going, but maybe. Well, we are going to New York for the 24 May event for Windows Phone 7, where they're presumably going to be talking more specifically about Mango. In fact, it's very likely that they'll talk about a release date. And who knows, maybe they'll show some hardware running Mango, some new devices. Probably not that, but...
well, that's what I was going to say. What do you think? I think there might be, a device or two there. Microsoft knows that the phones out right now are getting really, really stale, and that it needs some new hardware to keep people excited, and it can't wait for the holiday season. That's like over a year after the first phones came out.
True, and now with Mango having a much faster browser and having fast app switching, the phones could really benefit from multiple cores, more RAM, and no Windows Phone 7 device has multiple cores and over 512 megabytes of RAM. So there's a good opportunity here for them to drop some hardware.
But I mean, at least in terms of the CPU, there's not a chassis spec out there yet that allows for dual core processors, right?
Well, maybe they'll announce that too.
I don't know what's going on there, but yeah, I mean, even if these devices don't necessarily need the dual core for marketing purposes, I think that's sort of becoming the new high end. If you want to have a hot phone, you got to have a dual core processor, or at least in the next 3 months you will.
It's so funny, this dual core thing. The Galaxy S2 is the first dual core phone I've reviewed and have been using, and I can't find many situations where there's a tremendous difference in speed, except for some reason, not for some reason, but web browsing's obvious. There's definitely a huge improvement in web browsing. And two, installing applications from the marketplace is like 50% plus faster than the fastest single-core Android phone I've used.
But I mean, the browsing alone, to me, that's enough.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
Web browsing is one of my main activities on the phone, non-calling activities.
That's a fair point. I like to say that word, fair point, or 2 words. So yeah, Mango, some recent changes talking about the lock screen, having some dynamic displays with like visuals of the music you're playing, and Office 365 integration. A lot of Microsoft products. This most recent little bit of information about Mango isn't terribly exciting. It's just sort of extending Microsoft's assets and brands to Windows Phone further. I think consumers are most excited about the stuff like fast app switching, IE9, faster browsing, better performance across the board, Twitter integration, and
I'm sure we'll have tight Skype integration soon.
Yeah, that will be interesting too. That would be great to be able to, in the dialer screen, choose to make a call over Skype.
Oh, no doubt that's coming. I mean, they'd be silly not to leverage this as much as possible to get their, $8.7 billion worth or whatever it was.
And with
they need to really push this hard and to make Skype really like the de facto to make Skype the FaceTime of the Windows world.
Yeah, and it's easy to see how Skype as a standard in video chat would trump FaceTime, because FaceTime is still very closed, and everyone has Skype, but not everyone has the right tools to use FaceTime. So it
All right.
definitely.
I mean, I suspect that FaceTime will eventually be universal, meaning you'll be able to get a FaceTime app for your Android phone or for your Windows Phone 7. But I think that the bigger point is that Skype as a company, that's all they do, and that's all they've been doing. While FaceTime, is just a division within Apple, and Apple is a big company, but I don't think that they have the resources to devote to FaceTime the same way Skype has and now Microsoft backing Skype has the resources to devote to this.
This is all assuming that Microsoft doesn't, mess it up and do the opposite of what it's intending. That is, encourage innovation. They don't want to stifle innovation with their extremely large company bureaucracy. And with rumor today of Microsoft possibly buying Nokia,
Right.
I mean,
Crazy.
it's crazy, and it's almost like, I don't know. We're not here to analyze companies, but it's very interesting at how Microsoft is just deploying its cash and stock to just buy these companies.
You want to talk about that for a sec? Because I don't think it would be a bad move. I mean, it basically gives Microsoft the same vertical integration that Apple has, which Apple really leverages to its advantage. You know what I mean? Because Microsoft would have the Nokia hardware then, which is very good hardware, and they could have a real compelling package there to sell to people, I think.
People have been calling on Microsoft to make a Microsoft phone for a very, very long time, and they don't do it because it's going to piss off the OEMs, their partners. I mean, that would be like Google literally making a Google phone, and that kind of is a bad vibe to send to Motorola, HTC, all the phones that are making Android hardware. They're thinking, wow, am I going to compete against the parent company now? This is ridiculous.
But maybe they don't want that model anymore. I mean, you really have two models out there. You have the Apple model, which is we'll make all our own hardware, which is one phone, and it's just such a great device, and we're really gonna work the vertical integration to our benefit, selling all these side services along with it, but also making the experience really tight. And then you have on the other end of the spectrum the Android model, which is we just have a platform, and you can do with it what you want, put it onto any phones. But that actually came from the original Microsoft model with Windows.
So
But I think that Microsoft is finding that model for phones isn't working out as well for them as it did on the desktop. And certainly now, when it's coming from a weaker position, and Windows Phone is certainly doing okay, but Android is the blockbuster, and iPhone too. So if it's not working, maybe it's time for a change. Maybe it's time to let Samsung and LG and really it's only a handful of OEMs that are making Windows phones, and they seem to be much happier and concentrating much more on their Android devices anyway. Maybe you have to change that model, cut the OEMs off, let them move to Android only devices, and you make just your own hardware with your Nokia team.
I think that would be too risky, but I think that they could do a hybrid model where they make like one specific Microsoft Nokia phone, and then they still allow their partners. I mean, Microsoft is kind of spoiled in that they've been having this licensing model since the beginning of their existence, and it's glorious if you're extremely forward thinking into appeasing the shareholders, and if
Right. Well, it's great if what you're licensing is the de facto standard like Windows is, but when it's a more of a luxury item that where people have a lot more choices in a given market, then I don't think it's working out that well for you, and you might be better off offering a better experience. I mean, that's that's something that the iPhone really offers that Android doesn't, and I think that Android is trying to catch up in, is, being able to offer a more integrated experience. And it's difficult because you have this big ecosystem of manufacturers, and what's going on the Google end of things, and then the carriers, of course. So I think it gets a little bit too difficult to manage, and that's one of the reasons that Apple is Apple has a much easier time in pushing out updates than we're finding anything based on Android does.
Absolutely. Vertically integrated is definitely better.
And again, Microsoft with the problems with Nodo.
Nodo. I don't know why I just said that. But alrighty, let's move on to our final story. So it's possible that the iPhone 5 might not be called the iPhone 5, at least for now, and that we are going to see an iPhone 4S, kind of like we saw a 3GS. And if you think back to sort of the timeline, we had the original iPhone, then the iPhone 3G, which was very different than the original iPhone in terms of appearance, and it, of course, had the 3G radio. The 3GS was basically the same as the 3G, and yet it sold very, very well. And then the 4 was dramatically different in every respect. And now with the 4S, an analyst from Jefferies & Co., do you know what Jefferies & Co. is? Probably some financial institution, is saying that the next iPhone will be the 4S. It will have the A5 dual-core CPU. It'll have HSBA Plus support on T-Mobile. Nothing noted here about screen size, which would be disappointing, which is interesting because there's been so much clamor about a 4-inch screen, and now we're talking about keeping the screen size the same but bumping the specs.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only thing that we could say with pretty much certainty is that they're going to use that same A5 chip that's in the iPad, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that's almost a definite. Other than that, I mean, it makes total sense for them to expand the size of the screen. That's at this point, 4.3. Now we've got a couple 4.5-inch phones. It looks like. So and what's the iPhone screen? 3.5-inch.
Yeah, I mean they've got to bump up, and I mean that would be a very, very compelling next generation iPhone if it had a 4-inch screen, A5 chip, HSBA Plus support. Call it a day there. I mean that's going to be very compelling to people. I mean,
Yeah.
what else were we hoping for the next
Some
iPhone?
widgets on the home screen, maybe.
Well, yeah. I mean, we also are praying that there's going to be a new operating system released with the new iPhone because it's in desperate need of some change.
Well, how about Apple ties up with like American Express, like it did with Nike, and incorporate some hardware in there for NFC.
That'd be cool. Although, I mean, do consumers care about NFC? Is that a selling point at this point?
I think the early adopters care a lot about it, and it's going to start filtering down once people see some of the conveniences, like when you're at the store writing a check and the guy in front of you just like swipes his phone and his transaction's done. That might be a compelling use case scenario for you.
Have you ever been in that situation?
Not yet, but at the gas station, they were pretty forward thinking at all the gas stations where you could get these contactless payments at the right at the pump and even inside. So yeah,
I use the PayPass, the contactless payment. But what frustrates me about that is that, first of all, it's deployed in all the convenience stores, gas stations. It's very widely available. What's annoying is that they don't show you where the RFID or whatever is on the card. So sometimes I'm like swiping the upper left corner, tapping the upper right corner, the bottom. It gets a little confusing.
Yeah. It needs to be it needs to be explained better to consumers. They basically need to make it like dead easy. Be like tap here, and so you tap there.
Exactly. And another big inconvenience although this is a safety measure, is that with the contactless payment, you can't just pull out your wallet and tap because it's not strong enough. You have to actually take out the card, which kind of defeats the purpose of contactless slightly there.
Yeah, although, you have to balance between security. If they could easily make the radios more powerful on these things, but then, you have someone a couple feet away that could read your information and potentially decrypt it.
That would suck.
Yeah. I mean, didn't you just recently have an issue with some unauthorized so exactly what it's like to have your identity stolen or to have to deal with that sort of thing.
Yeah, it can be frustrating. Security is definitely a big issue, and I think a lot of people are worried about it, especially when it comes to identity theft and people using your credit card when you don't.
Yeah, see, the key is you keep all your cash under the mattress, and you run your credit down so bad that even if someone does steal your identity, they're not going to be able to get a card or anything.
Is that your tactic?
I'm not saying necessarily that's what I do. I'm just saying, that's really your best defense against that sort of crime. So for any young listeners out there, take your money out of the bank, put it under your mattress.
No, don't
get one credit card and really just run it up and then never pay it off.
That's a great way to...
You'll never get identity thefted.
Well, that's probably not best practice, so don't listen to that. But...
yeah, right. Isn't this a smartphone show? People don't want to hear my advice on personal finance.
Awesome. All right. Well, that will do it for the podcast number 14. We will see you all number 15. Thanks for listening.
Bye, guys.